This is the Unshadowed Thought Podcast with James Hall. This podcast is dedicated to Michelle Goyevich, Ed White, Caitlin Treacle, and I Chan, and also all the others that have lost their life as a direct result of psychiatric harms. Okay, welcome back to the Unshadowed Thought with James Hall. Today we're going to talk about something really near and dear to my heart. So near and dear to my heart that I rarely talk about it. And as such, I tend to think this podcast will be a little bit wild. Maybe some people won't understand it real well, or maybe averse to the ideas, or have some seriously conflicting ideas, which is totally fine. I welcome them. And anyone that wants to reach out and let me know, that's fantastic. This podcast is strictly based on my experiences and the thoughts that I've had on the matter. And even sometimes some of the things that I've experienced even defy logic for me and my own thoughts on the matter. So, interestingly enough, I'm not particularly attached to the things I'm going to talk about today. They are what they are, and this is what I've experienced, and these are my thoughts around them. So let's get started. Today I want to talk about meditation, and there's a tremendous amount of information out there around meditation, especially in Western culture. And there's kind of two perspectives on meditation. There's kind of this low-level perspective, which goes for a lot of things like exercise, diet. There's this surface level explanation and expectation that we have of benefits we get from, diet and exercise, relationships, all this stuff. And then there's something much deeper on the subject. And so with meditation has been proven beneficial in a lot of ways. It's kind of almost like a buzzword. People talk about meditation and how they meditate, and they have this style and technique and all these different things going on with it. And from that perspective, from a low-level perspective, meditation is helpful. Why? Because it gets us in touch with calming our bodies down, calming our nervous systems down. It gets us in touch with this really interesting phenomenon, and I've seen living in Western society for a while, where the people are on autopilot. They go from one task to the next, to the next, to the next, and they really turn their brain off. And they'll complain to you and regurgitate, I should say, anecdotes from movies or shows that they've watched, that they've heard from friends and family, all this different stuff. And when you talk to them, interface with them, you kind of wonder, like, is this person actually a person, or are they just a sum total of all the interactions they've had throughout their whole life, or is there something more to them? And I often forget that that's really because we're very busy, right? We're very busy, we're high stress. We don't put a lot of thought into the things that we do because society kind of demands that from us in an informal way. It says, like, you need to go to work, you need to do this, you need to eat this, you need to watch your favorite show at night. I just got remembered Lego Movie at the beginning when Emmett has this routine of stuff he does that's all based on the instructions. The movie's so good. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, it's a comedy. It's a kids show, or a kids movie, but it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Maybe I'm labeling myself there, but it's true. So we get these kinds of people, right? And which is most of us, which was me for a very long time as well. I don't want to think that I'm kind of singling other people out. I share in this kind of mentality for a very, very long time. And something that meditation does at a low level is it breaks that habit, right? It breaks the humdrum of everything that we do and the autopilot that we get on. It brings us down to a place where we experience some quiet and some calm, and it allows our brain to slow down. And typically what happens when our brain slows down is it then opens up to independent thought, and or maybe, if you're lucky, critical thought about things. I suppose that brings me to another point, that there's differences in meditation, right? There's physical meditation, where you may do an exercise and calm your mind and try to enter into a meditative state. And then there's meditating on words, or meditating on books, or meditating on thoughts or ideas. And that's just the idea of taking quiet time to think through different ideas and different thoughts that you have or share or have gotten from somewhere else. I'm not going to be talking about the latter. I'm going to be talking about the former in this podcast. Contemplative thought about ideas and philosophy and different things, or even things that are or happenings in your life, is a really important practice as well. To me, I think it doesn't have to be this way, but for me, I think I've always taken time out to think about things if I could, periodically. But then when I started meditating, I became more meditative towards everything else in my life. So I would meditate more often on the thoughts, actions, and words of others as a natural course of my life. So I think meditation, the practice of meditation, can lead towards being meditative or meditating on the people's words as well. So one can lead to the other, certainly. And I think it's probably backwards compatible from the way that I just said it also, is that if you meditate on people's words, you'll probably end up easily or maybe more seriously considering the physical act of meditation. So with that being said, that's a little bit of a preface. I am not here to talk about the simplistic or superficial act of meditating. I think it's helpful in a small sense, but I've always been repelled by it, because I think when I get small relief from things like calming my breathing and doing different things, like I can calm my breathing and then do things. I can do things to calm my mind and my body down, but I don't really use a meditative technique. I just do it because I have a practice of doing it. Being meditative in your actions and doing different things with a meditative perspective, I think, is rad. I do that at times as well. But when I think of meditation, I think of deep meditation and using meditation as a vessel to go somewhere else entirely, and or to reset your being, both physically and mentally. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Kind of a deep meditation. People might call it like a transcendental type of meditation. I don't find, in respects to meditation, I don't find any value in trying to put labels on it, or trying to say this brand, that brand, this kind, that kind. I think when we start talking about meditation, we start talking about a universal experience that human beings have of their inner self and their ability to tap in, handle, and enter in to a realm of the inner self. So that being said, it's kind of a serious, it's, there's you can't really not be serious about meditation. It's just kind of a simplistic, serious thing, but you also can't take it too seriously, because that defeats the purpose, right? So we're entering into a place of like neutrality and balance is what I was thinking about earlier today. I was trying to think the act of meditating, like what is that? So the act of meditating, in my mind, is putting yourself into a place of neutrality, right? So when you want to meditate, you go into a quiet room, you go somewhere where you can focus on being inside yourself, right? So in order to do that, you have to achieve this state of neutrality, or this state of calm that allows you to block everything else out, right? All you're doing is shutting out external stimuli, right? You can't have a conversation with someone else while you're doing this type of meditation. You can't be playing a video game or have the noises of a video game be going off around you when you're meditating. Generally speaking, you can certainly get good enough at it where you could do that, but it's kind of a basis for meditation. And the cool part of meditation, or the amazing part and the importance of meditation, is what happens after that moment where you get into a calm place, you get into a quiet place, and you enter kind of your inner self. I kind of forgot. I'm going to take a step back for a moment. I started to sidebar earlier, and then I just went straight back into talking about meditation more. So, why is meditation important? The reason why meditation is important to me right now is because I spent the last few years healing my body and my mind, of course, to a certain extent. And now I feel like the biggest progress I have left to make is all in my mindscape. And that I see myself having like severe barriers of trauma and emotions and different things that, like, for instance, akathisia. When I get that, I have severe ideation, and I may have this internal feeling that feels like I'm going to explode, and then it comes and goes, and I'm really at the whims of whatever I'm experiencing. But what I've noticed is that I've been dealing with it for so long that now I have this mental kind of stigma and this neuroplasticity that's built around it, to where there's a lack of neuroplasticity, I should say, where I experience these extremely unpleasant emotions even when I start to feel it ramping up, or I start to feel an opportunity for akathisia to come on. So I see that I'm being controlled by my emotions and my body instead of the other way around. And these are things of the mind. These are patterns and habits that are being built by my experiences, and then my mind is indulging these things. And or however you want to cut it, I could say, I'm not responsible for this, my mind isn't doing this, but yet my mind has experienced these things, and my mind has an opportunity to stop these things and or back off the experience. So I started meditating again a while ago, and what happened is I was having these episodes of akathisia, and when I was in between episodes, I started meditating because I was so thankful for the fact that I wasn't in an episode. And when I did that, I realized that I was going longer and longer between episodes, and that my ability to meditate was mitigating my experience of the akathisia, or at least the suffering component, the mental fear and emotion that I was experiencing for those events. So when I started doing that, it was either before or during, I started to understand that the next leap in healing for me, and I think for a really, really large group of others, is going to be meditation. What I see in the community is a lot of people get through this acute trauma phase where they're dealing with the immediate severe repercussions of harm, either in withdrawal or from an electrical injury or physical injury or TBI of some other sort. And once they get through this initial blowback, which could be huge, could take years, could take us many years. Once they get through that, and then they get into this kind of longer recovery stage, the emotional barriers and syndromes and dynamics that we've built are extremely hard to get around. Some of us, and definitely myself, experience like severe depression, anxiety and stuff just because we expect it. And we've been doing it for 4 years. I've been experiencing, depression, anxiety that piggyback on like severe body pain that I get. And now I'm starting to realize that my body pain maybe is not as severe, but as soon as I start feeling it, I start getting severely depressed or anxious or having all these other things. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I having these cascading emotions that aren't proportional or proportionate to what I'm experiencing in my body? And when I feel my body and I feel the signals my body's telling me, it can be quite different than the emotional reaction that I'm having to these things. So there's that, right? And if we think of healing and the role meditation can play. So again, meditation is a way to get off of autopilot and to start critically thinking about and meditatively, like calmly thinking through what's going through your head, your mind, and your body, like all at the same time. So there's that. That's a really big one, right? That's just that alone right there is enough to consider meditation. But we're going to start getting into these more fringe ideas, and I'm not going to hold back in how I think about them or what I think about them. People already probably think I'm mad with some of my ideas, but I think I'm quite solvent. But the additional benefit of meditation is going beyond your physicality. The mind is far more grandiose, elaborate, complicated, intricate, beautiful, expansive, and wonderful, far greater than we can understand scientifically. So what does that mean? It means that the human mind is fully capable, in my opinion, of healing the body entirely, no matter how severe the injury is, and then healing itself, and to get wild, healing others, right? Throughout history, people have demonstrated incredible power to heal others and do all kinds of wild things with the power of their mind. I'm not willing to rule those things out just because I didn't see them or because science is telling me that's not true. I watch a lot of documentaries and shows about people just simply doing amazing things, whether it's mountain climbing or recovering from a certain injury or whatever. And there is a tremendous amount of things that medicine cannot explain, and I'm chalking this up to the incredible nature of being human and the human mind and the human body. People will continually fall back on what we know medically and what's been studied, but they constantly leave out the things, or they always leave out the things that medicine cannot explain, right? So the medicine can't explain or describe something, so it's just left off the record lots of times, or it's left out of people's opinions. And that's just people being cynical, right? If you're going to consider all the stuff that medicine has to offer, you have to be willing all the things that medicine does not consider or offer as well. These are real things. They're happening in our reality. We can go out and see them and interact with them. And that's how we know what reality truly is, not the reality that's presented to us, because we're presented with a lot of lies and danger and greed and things like that. So meditation, in my mind, in my experience, and what I've seen and heard, has a great bearing on moving beyond the healing that we understand into a realm of healing far beyond what we understand. So all of our atoms and molecules and everything that makes up our body are all connected, right? And then we see this invisibility around us, that's air, right? We know it's all atoms and molecules as well. It's all connected. So when I move my arms, it pushes around all these molecules of air, right? Our mindscape is the same way. The way we think and feel about our reality and the way we interpret that dictates what we experience and how our bodies react. I wish I had some more specificity, but I don't think I can. People's attitude and mental state has a tremendous amount to do with their physiology. You can say, oh, well, the brain regulates these different hormones and stuff to to cause this cascade of effects that makes us live longer or shorter or experience these diseases or not. But the fact is that's not provable, right? All we're seeing is there's a correlation, but the causation is still unknown. But we know the causation lays somewhere within the mind. And that's where the link is. We know that the genesis of these things comes from thought, right? And how we think about things. And then the cascade of effects downstream is the physiology of the brain and the hormones it releases and all this stuff. They all have this effect. But it starts in the mind, and the mind can do and control things that science doesn't necessarily understand. So this is something to keep at the forefront of your thought as we go through meditation. These are the things that can be affected and impacted. With meditation, you can affect and impact things far greater than you can understand, right? And that's a part of meditation as well. You're exploring a space that is far beyond what Western medicine understands and can do. That's the power of meditation, and that's what you can enter into if you choose. And what's the repercussion? You sitting quietly in a room and contemplating things and making a mental effort to heal your body, is that going to harm you in some way? You might get your feelings hurt if you think, you'll be completely healed if you sit down and think about it for 10 minutes and you walk away and that didn't happen, right? But I will take my feelings being hurt over getting a traumatic brain injury or, having a gallbladder clip lost inside my body that toxifies and ends up killing me later, right? These are the consequences of the desperate lengths we're going to heal our bodies or to make a change in our bodies, instead of maybe considering going into our mindscape first and considering our thoughts and how our thoughts impact our reality, one, our physical reality around us, and then two, our physiological reality in our bodies. It's a very simple thing, but it's very profound, and in the West it seems to be a non-starter. Like, you talk about meditation, or hey, maybe you should meditate that on that or whatever, right? It's like okay, yeah, you know what, that's those wise words, I'm going to do that. But then no one knows how to do it, and or it's just lip service and they're not interested in doing it anyway, so it doesn't go anywhere. But everyone has their own thoughts and opinions, right? Mine are veering away from the things offered to me in the medical model, and that leaves me with a stark reality that our ancestors had and that our ancestors used to advance themselves. And that's, what do I have around me? What do I have within myself that I can use to control my circumstance? I can use to control the way I perceive my life and the things that go on around me. Like, if I pay attention to those things and am purposeful about those things, can I affect what I want to affect without having to resort to surgery or, working a job I hate or doing something that sucks? You can even ask yourself, can you transform your reality through your thought? So if you start thinking differently, does that change the outcome of what you experience on a day-to-day basis? The law of attraction is one, and I think this is in the realm of what we're talking about, right? Like, if you change the way you're thinking and give up some of your negative thinking, I think you can bring things into your life that are really positive that you're looking for. And I'll go a step further. It's kind of a foundation of meditation is having, in my mind, my meditation practice is a lack of attachment. So we have a gravitational pull, in my mind, a metaphysical gravitational pull for the things that are good for us, the things that we're aligned with. So I'm aligned with healing myself outside of the medical model, right? So if I'm attached to that and I go after people, I find all these people that I look up to that are doing this kind of thing, and I constantly send them emails and phone calls and do all this stuff because I need to get this thing done where I learn about holistic natural treatments or whatever, is that going to get me closer to my goal? It's possible, right? There's a physical consequence for that, and it may be beneficial. In my experience with my life, it ends up working in the opposite direction. It pushes me farther away from my goal. However, if I let go of my attachments, if I let go of my strong desire to attain something or to have something in my possession, the closer I get to it. Right? So that's a mental attachment that I create myself to a certain thing that I think is cool or that I want. Right? If I give up that attachment in pursuit of these things, which is oxymoron, there's a lot of paradoxical things that are happening in life that we kind of wake up to, then it's easier for me to attain those things by letting go. And this is something I'll talk about in terms of meditation as well. So getting back on topic, meditation has, a really profound opportunity to do things or explore a realm that is not something that we understand. Inherently in meditation, you're letting go of your thoughts, right? You're letting go of your conscious thoughts. So you're like deverbalizing the way you think in your head. And you're tapping into something there that's unexplored. It's not able to be expressed with words. And that might be why there's a lot of lack of understanding around the topic or shallowness around the topic. And so with that, I'll dig a little bit deeper into my experience with meditation, what I think the problems are, the hurdles are with meditation for others, and some different anecdotes. But really my goal is for people that are looking for help with meditation or looking for help with healing, to give them thoughts and ideas that stimulate a different path that they can explore if they're interested in. So there's a lot of ideas around meditation, right? There's these techniques and there's these forms that you can go into a deeper meditative state. For me, it's always been a state of tranquility, right? So it's this place where you can go, where you can be completely and entirely calm and experience that, right? It's so vastly different than what the human body and nervous system experiences on a regular day, right? You have light coming in, sound, all these things, and they all get interpreted, and really your body is moving at a trillion, sensory perceptions a second, and it's a lot, but it's normal for us, so we're fine with it. So what happens when we bring that down and we enter in a place of calm? Well, a lot of different things happen for different people, I think. Usually you start getting some physiological effects, right? Like your blood pressure can go down. You start to regulate your thought processes. Stress gets relieved. Even if your rumination is leading to depressive thoughts, you can have, relief from your depressive thoughts and stuff like that. It also opens us up for contemplating things that are big issues in our life, right? If you have a big problem that you're dealing with, if you're in a quiet spot and you're meditating, you can think of different approaches or different perspectives on that problem, and that can be helpful. That's kind of this traditional sense of meditation, and there's a lot that can be done with that, right? Even going down that path, if that's where you feel inclined to start, that's an excellent idea. That's essentially where I started. I just want to calm things down and enter a state of quasi-tranquility and see what happens. I just want to be calm. I just want to be there. And it helps me, one, feel more positive, feel good, but it also gives me perspective and allows me to figure things out better than I could when I was in this kind of monstrosity of autopilot, just trying to get things done all the time and having very limited thought, a lack of diversity in thought for myself. I think this state also encourages neuroplasticity, which is a big healing factor So we'll start in kind of the moderate state and then work into something I think is a more critical state, a more profound state. But there's the surface thing of just like taking a few minutes to take a breath and sit down and just be calm. And then there's this state of kind of contemplative thought, where if you're calm and you're thinking, right, when typically you're doing the opposite, you're not calm and you're not thinking well, right? Even just being calm and thinking through things, you open yourself up to a higher level of neuroplasticity, and you can start to build your ability to think critically, think metaphysically, think about things that exist outside your regular functioning. And that can be tremendously beneficial, right? There's a lot to be said for that as well. And I think as people dive into more of what Western ideas about meditation are, that's usually where you land up, right? And so that has benefits, right? Anytime we make ourselves more plastic neurologically, right, that's a benefit for healing, a benefit for thinking. It starts to open up the options on where you can go, in terms of your healing or just in terms of existing as a human, right? Like if you think more diversely, if you can think through your problems instead of relying on others or experiencing a tremendous amount of failure before you're forced to do something different, it's always a really, really good thing. And it's all interesting in that, but for me, the primary thing I want to talk about is why people can't get past that stage, I think, in Western kind of culture and society. That stage is good. It's great for a lot of things. I don't think it creates like completeness for a human being, right? I think there's something more deep, more profound that we're all looking for in our existence, right? We have this sense of spirituality. We feel connected to nature, to each other, to our larger existence, and all these things. And in the West, I'll just use the West as a statement for, kind of like really industrialized Western, thinking, is that in the West, we think things are this conglomeration. Like you take all the best experiences and ideas of your life and you just keep building on that, and people will tell you to do this and you got to do that, because you got to make money and you got to be healthy, or you got to listen to your doctor and all these different things. So we take this conglomeration of ideas and we start applying them. And so with meditation, it could be the same thing, right? Like we're taking the conglomeration of all these other people's ideas and we are trying to go forward with it. Well, that we're talking about, in all honesty, right, with meditation, we're talking about returning to a pure place or restoring a pure place within ourselves where we can kind of ascend out of the consciousness that we have into something better. So you're trying to explore something that you don't even know where you're going, right? That's kind of the essence of meditation. You're finding that calm meditative spot so that once you get there, it allows you to be able to go somewhere else and you don't know where you're going. Right? If you put intent or attachment behind it, then you do know where you're going, right? So if you're saying, I'm going to sit here and meditate and I'm just going to get calm, or I'm going to figure out an answer to my problem, that's where you'll go because that's your intent. But here's the problem, is that you are the sum total of this conglomeration of ideas that you've been indoctrinated with since you were a child. And if you're from the West, a lot of that it's structured, it's rigid, it has finite boundaries, and that's what is explored and explained. Anything that falls outside those boundaries doesn't really exist for you. You don't have any thoughts about it. You don't have any expression of things you don't understand. And of course, I'm not talking to you directly. I'm saying generally, this is what we're taught and this is how we're raised, right? So thinking about things that we don't understand can seem ridiculous or not worth our time or unproductive. But the fact is if we start considering and looking at things that we don't understand or that don't exist for us, we can start to build on our experience that doesn't yet exist, right, in a meditative state. Again, it's paradoxical. So your brain is capable of incredible creativity, far beyond anything that you could realize or think about in this moment, right? So your brain can spontaneously create incredible things, right? Think about Einstein and the theory of relativity. Like, he was stuck in the clerk's office with a really benign job. He didn't have anything to do but imagine things and create things in his own mind. And this is what he needed to get to the theory of relativity and get to his greater writings, right? He needed peace. He needed his mind to be free to travel to other places. And so this is part of the power of meditation. So back to what I was kind of speaking about a moment ago, is that we have all these constructs around what we think it should be and what it shouldn't be and all this stuff. This can be very hard to escape. And this is where I see hang-ups with my friends and family or whoever I'm talking to, is that meditation is the abandonment of all the things that we've been taught, and that's the foundation, right? So if we abandon everything that we've been taught, right, how do we step forward? And I think this is why meditation also becomes like a moot point, like something useless for most people, is because, right, so you achieve nothingness, like, or you're calm and you're peaceful, right? Like, what does it benefit you after that? And that's where we have to come back to something different in my mind. And this is where we enter into my particular exploration. And I'll tell you kind of the background on it, and then and what I've experienced and whatnot too. But up front, I'll tell you the problem that I see with it for everybody else, and ultimately it's the same problem for myself that I try to tackle, but I made incredible progress with. This is how I've come to the understanding that I have, or any knowledge or understanding or creativity that I have came through this process. And fundamentally, the process is you're attached to the things on this earth, and that drives your opinions, your feelings, and all this stuff. So if we let go of those attachments, right? So my attachment to my physical body, that drives a lot of anxiety and depression for me. I'm attached to my pain. I don't want to experience my pain. I am afraid that I'll be tortured to death if I'm locked up for being crazy or something like that, right? That's an attachment. I don't have to experience emotional or even physical pain if that experience happened to me, right? There's been people in history who choose not to experience the pain because they've trained themselves out of experiencing pain. They've trained themselves out of experiencing emotional trauma or an emotional tie to a stimulus, right? We've been trained into those things our whole lives, but we can train ourselves out. And that's what we do when we look at our attachments, right? So when you're meditating, you kind of enter into the state, and then your attachments start coming forward, right? So what's the first thing that'll come up? Oh, you're sitting there totally peaceful, right? And you're like, oh, I forgot. I got a bill that's due tomorrow. I got to get up and pay that, right? That entered into your mind because you have an attachment to it. Oh, someone's mad at me. I should give them a call. Or I hate their guts. I'm never going to call them again, right? You're attached to that relationship. Does that bill or relationship have anything to do with your physical existence or place in the universe? No, it doesn't. You don't have to pay the bill. You don't have to have a relationship with that person, right? Those things aren't going to affect how you live or die, right? The only thing that's going to affect how you live or die is your thought processes, right? And how you experience your reality. But you choose how you experience your reality, right? So as we're entering in to meditation, it gets really, really complicated to move on to the next level where we can experience something, far greater that we're meant to experience, in my opinion. So and I'll go into that a little bit. So we have these attachments that come up. So in the world, our attachments kind of get stimulated. As you're doing things, you feel pressure to go quicker or to go slower and all this stuff, right? But you can remove your attachment if you practice. And meditation becomes the practice of removing your attachments. So when you sit down to meditate, you're calming yourself, you're letting go of all those attachments. So all those things that you did care about, you're going to a state where you don't care about them anymore. And furthermore, when you're awake, you kind of are not non-meditative. You're trying to let go of those attachments as well, and you practice it and you get better at it. So you build a discipline of letting go of those attachments. So there's that, right? So as we let go of those attachments, we can get into a truly meditative state. So we can get into a tranquil state. And for the people that are listening that haven't experienced that tranquil state, it's fantastic. You feel free, you feel light, right? It's not like a physical sensation, it's like an emotional sensation. Like you're just here, you just exist, and your mind can just be free of thought and emotion. You don't feel captive to anything. You can float between your thoughts, you can feel the sensations on your body. You don't have any urges going this way or that way. You're just here. You can start to enter into meditation. You let go of your attachments, and that's really the entry spot for going on to higher levels, in my opinion. Right? And this is where we'll get kind of metaphysical, and we'll get into my experiences, which I think are really significant and important. But other people don't. Other people may see meditation differently. They may see the human experience differently. But this is how I see it. And you don't have to prescribe or believe or think highly of my experiences or what I'm saying. But I'm just handing them over to you to review, think, and evaluate for yourself in order that you can get to a place that you're happier with, or you can consider ideas that you've never considered before and discard them, retain them, or do nothing with them. It's strictly up to you. But these are the kind of ideas that excite me, and these are the kind of ideas that I like hearing about. So me sharing them feels natural to a degree. They're deep, important experiences to me, so it is hard to share them. But the more people I talk to, the more I feel like sharing these things is important. So here I am. So that kind of gets us to the entry gate of what I experience or how I get to meditation. So a lot of people have real serious hardships around giving up their attachments, which means if you're affected, or I should say afflicted by serious attachments, then meditation can be very, very, very difficult for you. And you may think that meditation is useless, or that it doesn't have anything to offer. There's nothing more there. But I'm telling you, there's a lot more there. You don't have to access it. You don't have to do anything with it if you don't want to. That's totally fine. But if you're interested in it and you want to know what is possibly there, or what I would claim absolutely is there, this is how you get there. It's very metaphysical. It's very, it's all about your mindset and your mindscape and how you can interact with it and change it. So the further we go down this path, the more you'll have to let go of what you're trying to do and accept kind of what you can do and where you want to go. And even in controlling our thoughts, we have to let go of attachment. If you can't sit there and not be worried about a plane falling out of the sky and exploding, killing you and everyone you care for, right? If you can't let go of that, then meditation can be hard, right? This is the essence of what it is, right? It doesn't mean that's what you want to happen. It means you have to be willing to accept that could happen, and you don't have to react to it. You have a choice, right? You let go of your attachment to these things happening. And so from there, that's kind of the basis. And once you get there, then you can start to consider additional things. And this is where we get into, in my mind, what has been for me a deeper meditative state. And this is where in order to transcending, if you want to use that word, or raising above this state becomes very difficult because the fundamental thinking that we've been given and the indoctrination that we've been given can play very heavily right here, because we're entering into a state where it's your pure thought, right? There's no physicality, there's no way to validate or prove anything that goes beyond this point in the physical world. All of it is proven and or experienced inside you through your thought and through your human experience. You can communicate with these things about other people and you can relate and share experiences, right? But there's no modern science, there's no textbooks, there's no nothing to show you, hey, you can do this experiment to show that you experience these things or that these things exist, right? And this is the threshold of meditation. And this is why some people may get it and some may never get it. It's because they don't feel comfortable exploring things that they can't prove are real. So if you can get to the spot, right, like if you can let go of your attachments, if you can experience this neutrality and this peacefulness, then the question is, where do you go from there, right? So you experience that. My understanding and my experience has been, as I'll say right now. So when I started meditating, it was a while, right? I started meditating. I got interested in it. A friend was telling me about it. And then I don't know why that friend's words stuck, but they did. And I started looking into it more. And I picked up this particular practice of meditation. And I started doing it. And I felt the calm. I felt the peace. One thing I think I relate to with it is when I was a child, I was left to roam around in nature a lot, right? Like just cut loose, go out, just go. Like my parents would just let me run. They'd be like, hey, as long as you can hear me whistle, you go do whatever you want to do. And I whistle, you come back, right? So that was the rule. So that's what I did. And I was close to nature. When I think about doing that now, like with my kids, that's insane. It's totally insane. Just think about just letting them run wild. I mean, could I do it? Would I do it? Would I love to do it? Yeah. But like, I'm filled with fear of all the things they'll run into, right? All the ways they may be harmed. Well, I mean, good on my parents. They're like, just go wild. Like, they had complete and utter trust through and through with nature. They had no attachment to harm that I would find in nature, which is amazing. I love it, right? But as a child, I think it allowed me to connect to nature in a way that was completely uninhibited. And I would just exist there and run around as a kid. I mean, I have these vague memories, but I'm just out in the bush, in the forest, like, doing whatever. And I think maybe it predisposed me to a connection with meditation later on, but that was when I was a kid. As I grew up and became a teenager and whatever, I was always in the city, I was always doing this or that, and it was rarely productive, and it was always full of attachment, essentially. So when I'm coming back to it, I had this connection with meditation, and I had an ability to calm myself down pretty well. And I entered into this threshold of meditation really, really often, and I always felt great afterwards just from calming myself down and letting go. So there's this other piece of meditation that I was taught, and that advancing through meditation takes virtue. And this is a piece that I think the West is missing as a whole. I don't think people care about virtue anymore. I think people think the Stoics are a joke. And, I mean, not everybody, right? Some people do. It's worth consideration. People have fanciful thoughts about loyalty, kindness, compassion, fortitude, resolve, all these things that was popular by the Greeks and Romans and stuff, right? and the world ran on those things at that time. Well, I think we've abandoned some things that were pretty useful, right? The fact that anyone I go talk to has no concept of their own fortitude, honesty, compassion, and all this stuff. They don't know. It's not something they measure. It's not something they care about. They say, well, I'm a nice person, right? Well, what's the qualification for being a nice person? Like, how do you know you're nice? And before I know, I talk to them a little bit and I find out, well, yeah, you're really nice about some things, but you're not nice about others, right? There's this lack of measurement. Measurement might be the wrong word, right? There's this lack of accountability or seriousness around it, or there's this lackadaisical thought or dynamic around it, and I think it's really unhelpful. It doesn't mean people should be pressured or have this standard of like what compassion is or what honesty is, right? But it's something that I think if we're going to use the human language, right, if you're going to learn English to be able to speak it, I think you should be able to relate human concepts. And so having a more strict or a higher standard of what you think compassion is and how it applies to your own character, I think that's pretty important. In fact, I think it's fundamental. But I find myself alone in that thinking process, at least linguistically, at least in the way people express themselves, right? I think a lot of people think compassion is important, right? But I don't think they take it seriously. They're just like, oh, I'm very compassionate. I try hard to be. I do all these things for others and stuff like that. But I think it deserves more thought. Put it that way. I think if we're thoughtful about how we're compassionate, it just enhances the issue. So, anyways, getting back to meditation. So, this is where we get wild, right? I think people experiencing deeper states of meditation is directly proportionate to how much virtue they have. I think there's different kinds of virtue, right? There's compassion, there's honesty, there's fortitude, there's resilience, right? There's these different things that all kind of boil down to the same set of characteristics that people kind of want to embody. Or like if you thought about who do you want as a friend, right? You want someone that's kind and honest and has the ability to go the mile with you, right? And won't turn their back on you when things get hard. This is kind of a fundamental of what we want in a person that we talk to or are friends with or are a family member with, right? So I submit that this is a fundamental part of human existence. I think we can all universally agree that this is what we want, right? That's a very profound thing. For everyone to be able to agree on what they think a good person is, this is not a happenstance. This is not a trend. This is not something that's here today and gone tomorrow, right? This is something that we could say is fundamental to being a human being, right? And as we look through things, as we think through things, I think we should ask ourselves this question, right? Like, what's wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with that? Have I identified something that's a core characteristic to being human? Or take it a step further, and do I think this is a core characteristic of existence? Right? So now our meditation starts to lead to something deeper. And then so we have these thoughts, right? And then we start exercising these thoughts in our lives. And if we believe that, right? If we take a step out and we say, I need to be kinder to people, I need to be honest all the time, and I need to have the integrity to follow through on everything that I do as best as I can, even when it's difficult, even when it comes at great personal cost, or right, there's physical and emotional pain involved in that. Like sacrifice is a big one, sacrificing things for others, right? That's a big one. Everyone wants that. Everyone needs someone to sacrifice for them at some point, right? It's a rare thing that it's needed, but when it's needed, it's critically needed. So the fulfillment of these characteristics in a person, right? What happens when we do these things, right? We feel good, right? There's a positive reaction that happens inside us. Well, I'm going to argue that positive reaction is something deeper, and that is tied in to the characteristic of existence, right? And we're gaining something. I mean, if you look eastward, right, we're talking about karma. We're talking about these different concepts that are not alien, and they're very commonplace in other cultures, right? Like, doing good things means you're doing something good for yourself and you're building something up. So I'm not going to go into a lot of, theological or philosophical detail on these things. I don't think they're particularly important, although some people would say it's the most important thing. For our purposes, talking about this, we're talking about healing, and they're talking about setting people on a path to getting better and experiencing a human existence that they want and that has value and that increases how they feel about themselves as a human being. I think it's critical that we talk about it, and specificity isn't particularly important. Although I am more than happy to talk specifically to any person that reaches out. But for the purposes of a podcast that goes out to multiple people, I don't think specificity is particularly important. I think everyone develops their own ideas, and that's the most important thing. So there's virtue. We have this virtue, right? And we build that up and we act on that. And here's where things get wild. And here's where you may get lost, but these words may have more meaning to you at a different date if you come back and listen to them. I submit, and my experience is that virtue changes the fabric of your reality. We don't understand a lot about the fabric of reality. We know we do things and reactions happen, right? You act violently, and you're going to land up in jail, right? You act kindly, you should have a lot of kind reactions back to you. And this is a general rule. What about the specificity, right? What determines where you end up, right? There's kind people that end up in jail, right? There are bad people that never get caught. There is a purpose and a direction in our lives. Some people would argue against that. I've never experienced that. I've never believed that. Like, I've always felt the purpose of life. I've had close friends that don't feel that way. And I can talk to them blue in the face about what I've experienced, and it just doesn't match their experience somehow, or they hate life enough to where they don't want to see purpose in it. I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to figure them out, right? All I can do is speak to my experience. But my argument, my experience has been, as we practice these things, the fabric of our reality changes. What does that mean? That means that the events and the happenstances of our life begin to change. So as I'm working on my virtue, I'm being kinder to people, I'm doing the things that I think are right? And I'm changing my mindset to embrace honesty, right? I never lie. I'm not making a statement about that. I'm saying, as I endeavor to never lie or be dishonest about anything, things start to change for me, right? Like, I get more opportunities to be even more honest. Things happen to me that have never happened before. People come out, they do me kindness, or they ask my opinion about things that have never done that before, right? All these things start to change. At times, there will be resistance and adversity, right? Things will come out. I'll have these days where everything goes wrong. Everything goes wrong, and it just breaks me as a person. And instead of seeing that as bad luck or something dumb or just a sucky day, right, I can see an intent behind it. I can see a test of my character behind it. And the more character I show at that time, the more I can feel things changing in a different direction than they did in the past. So this is just generally speaking in life, right? But my contention is that in meditation, these changes are, again, changing the fabric of our reality. They're changing the energy makeup of our existence, right? So I was on this path. I was meditating all the time. It was great. But I never experienced anything special. I've heard of special experiences, I've heard all kinds of wild stuff, and it was always interesting. And I was actually had a firm attachment to those things, but I was letting go of that attachment. I was saying to myself, okay, when I meditate, I'm not looking for any special experience. Like, I'm happy, I'm here, I'm calm. Like, I've never been more happy with my life. I've never had more gratification from my life. I felt whole. I felt a piece of the universe. I felt complete with nature. I felt as if I was exactly where I should be, right? And then, so months, I'm meditating for months, not every day, a few times a week, but on the weekend, I would do a group meditation. And so I went to the group meditation, and always, it's hard. There's distractions when you're in a group. It's a little bit different than meditating at home, but I'm meditating in this group setting, and I slowed down. The point is to enter into tranquility, to just be completely calm, and I did. I was completely calm very quickly that day. I don't know why it happened on that day, but so I was completely calm, and I closed my eyes. I'm sitting in a sitting position, and like I was just filled with complete peace and tranquility that totally permeated everything, completely and utterly, 110%. Like, this was not, I've always been present while I've been meditating, and I was present now. So you can hear bees buzzing around, you hear different things, and they kind of float in and out of your consciousness, but you're just calm and they just don't affect you, right? This was entirely different. You have this kind of vision, you can see through the back of your eyelids as well. This was just white for me. Everything was just white, a puristic white. And I just felt completely whole. It's likened to, people tell me they have these LSD trips, or they go out in nature and experience these things where they just feel connected, right, and it overwhelms them. And then they feel great afterwards, right? This was a similar experience. I'm not trying to place my experience above or below anybody else's. I'm just trying to relate it to you in the most pure and honest terms possible that'll help you understand it. So I'm getting kind of like choked up about my own experience thinking back about it. But so I entered into a state. To me, I equate it to the most pure tranquility that I've ever had, right? So I closed my eyes. I didn't go anywhere, right? Like, I didn't float away to some other realm or something like that. I was still present. I was still here, but everything was pure. It was light. I was completely at peace. There was no thoughts, nothing. Like, I experienced pure tranquility. Trying to find a better way to relate it, but that was it. So I just felt whole and complete and present, and there was nothing else, right? There's no unpleasantness. I didn't feel my body. There was no pain from the sitting position. There was no thoughts. There was no nothing. So I entered this state, right? And I was just there. And then someone came up behind me and touched me on the back, and they said, "Hey, meditation's over. Like, it's been an hour," right? I felt like I was sitting there for less than 5 minutes. Literally, this is no exaggeration. No one's ever had to tell me meditation was over before, right? This is not, it's not a thing. There's a part of you when you meditate for like an hour that is wanting the meditation to be over the whole time, because you're sitting in a fixed spot, and like your thoughts will come up and they'll come and go and all this stuff, right? It's not the easiest process, although it feels good, right? It's not the easiest thing to endure. So someone came up and had to tell me it was over. I wasn't asleep. I was there. I just entered into a different place. Just complete tranquility washed over me, and up until that point, I didn't necessarily believe that was even a thing. I thought, you'd get really calm and it would get easier, and the more you do it, that was it, you know. But that's what I experienced. That experience was far different than anything I've ever experienced otherwise as a human being. It's stuck in my memory, like really, really, really well, because it was a profound experience. Immediately after that, I thought about it a bit. It's when you experience something like that, it's not as if there's some details that you can go back and think about over and over and over again. You're experiencing something that's beyond yourself, that is an absence of activity and a wholeness. I can't recall, when I get hit by a car, like the color and all these details about the car that hit me and all this stuff, right? It's quite another experience. So it was rad, right? It was really cool, but I formed an attachment to that experience. So the next time I went back, I felt like I should be able to repeat the same thing. And it didn't happen. And I realized my attachment pretty quickly. And while I had an attachment, I also had a feeling that I could remember. And when I meditate now and ever since then, and there's a long time I didn't meditate for, so it was probably like 15 years at least I didn't meditate at all. I just lost the practice. I just entered into a different state of just doing the same old crap every day and working a job. But now there's a connection I have with meditation. The closer I get to that state, I can feel it. I can feel a connectedness. So when I'm meditating, as my thoughts and my attachment start to kind of drift away, I can feel kind of being filled up with a sense of serenity, a sense of tranquility, a sense of connectedness with everything around me, right? Because we are all connected. All the molecules, all the atoms, everything is connected. All of our energy is connected. So the more I meditate and the more I experience these things, the more connected I am with everything else. So even now, when I get stressed out, when I start panicking or doing whatever, how I get myself down from those things is I start thinking about the connectedness I feel through meditation, and that sensation or that feeling of connectedness starts to mitigate all the negativity that I experience in all the other situations that I'm in. So you can start to see the power of meditation. And I wouldn't even say that I've taken meditation particularly seriously or been particularly diligent about it. I've taken it pretty seriously. I mean, I think about it, I contemplate it, like it's very, very interesting. It's very cool to me. So I take it seriously. But obviously, if I stopped doing it for like 15 years, then I didn't apply myself as diligently as I could have in that sort of realm of seriousness. I haven't been the most serious about it. So when I think about the benefit that people can get and the failures that people have had around it, or the misunderstandings people have around meditation, that is what I'm critical of. That is what I think people are missing. And I'm hoping the Western language I use to describe it is illuminating for people and helps get them to a place where they can benefit from it, one, but two, and most importantly, have a choice to experience something truly transformative, and they have a different avenue to travel in their life, a different path that they can believe in and choose and go. We're not stuck in the reality that we have. We can change the fabric of our reality in a lot of different ways. And this exploration is particularly interesting and fun and cool. And I really hope it benefits others, for sure. So recently I've picked the practice back up, and it's a whole different ballgame for me because of the injury. I have some more serious like emotional attachments. I have physiological things that push on me a little bit harder, like if I'm in a really excited state, meaning I'm extremely anxious, or I'm experiencing akathisia in one form or another, or I feel like it's ramping up, like meditation is not going to happen. Or I can say I've tried and I've failed at it lots of times, like being that activated and trying to calm down. In fact, it's felt like it's made it worse, right? Like trying to sit still and be peaceful and be in a quiet room when like you feel like you're about to explode is not is not fun. I don't think, obviously I don't think it's harmful, right? Like I think it can help us stop running away and pushing away what our body's experiencing by going through this practice, even in the midst of that kind of thing. I think it can help us understand it better and the true nature of what's going on. But it's precarious, and it is definitely different than what I experienced in the past, right? It's a part of my regret that I had something really cool in the past that I could have explored a lot more, but instead I chose to indulge in the reality that was around me and that everybody else was pushing, to work and to go see a doctor when you had a problem and all this stuff. And given the gift that was given to me through meditation and stuff, it was just a profoundly poor choice. And there's a part of me that knew it was wrong when I was doing it the whole time, but I actually had the delusion that I was sacrificing myself for others, and that made everything okay, or it made it virtuous, but it wasn't. The part about virtue that is difficult or can throw people off is that virtue in itself is a balance. If someone is profoundly honest, but they don't have compassion or fortitude, then the honesty just ends up being damaging, right? You've met people that have no filter, right? And yet they can't even consider others. So say they use expletives and a bunch of other stuff that's inappropriate, right? Like there's the honesty that they have is not balanced, so it deprives the person of having virtue. So virtue in itself is a very enigmatic thing. It's hard to explain and master because there are so many different dimensions to it. But that's what, in my mind, that's what life is about, the pursuit of balancing that virtue and growing them all and considering them and learning from them. The cool thing about character and virtue is not being those things. It is what you learn from those things. For me, trying to balance those things has taught me far more about life than I ever thought that I would learn otherwise, right? Like when you're a kid, you might get fascinated with like being tough, right? And you just lift weights and you get in fights and do all this stuff and you're super tough, right? Well, you're left with all these other gaps in your character and you see all these other failings that you have because of that, right? So learning to then shift from being tough and then being compassionate towards others, or having fortitude around helping others, or just having fortitude, period. Like being tough and being able to endure a lot are completely different things, right? So as we move from one thing to another and we maintain one set of virtue that we've built and then accepted another one, they start to complement each other and you start to learn more and more for all the different things that you try to accomplish or you try to embody in yourself. And it's a profoundly amazing experience, and it's always expanding, kind of like the universe. I see the universe, and I have seen it in a new way lately, that it's an incredibly creative thing that's always expanding. And when I look at what I'm trying to do for myself, I look at what is the natural law around me, right? And seeing the universe constantly growing and expanding and all the beauty and creativity that's in it really inspires me to think about, again, expand my virtue in a different way, and be accepting and be thoughtful and be expressive in ways that bring people joy and that is honest and that is, um, enduring or has a lot of character to it, right? And the more we learn about this stuff, the farther it goes, and we just end up in really, really fantastic places. And so I'll add a little bit more about my recent meditation, and then we'll probably end the cast. It's getting to a good length, which I like. So lately I started meditating again, and it has spaced out the time in between, kind of episodes that I've had with akathisia. It feels like it has brought the suffering that I've been experiencing into perspective, to where I'm starting to be able to segregate out the suffering from the pain. And when I meditate and I start thinking through my pain, I start realizing that my brain doesn't have to experience that pain. Is it an easy path to eliminate that pain? No, it's not. It's a very serious, deep, thoughtful thing to do something that radical, to where you don't have to experience pain as pain, right? It's a neurological sensation and a message that an electrical signal that's being sent from one area of your body to another, right? So we can get to really profound changes in our human experience, again, the change of the fabric of reality as we experience it, by meditating on and thinking about these things and then exploring these things and seeing what happens. So the changes that I'm pushing on now are in that direction, and I've already had some progress with them. Like anything else, it's not easy. You have to stick with it. You have to have fortitude. You have to endure and overcome the challenges that pop up. But it's a very real thing. So I'll leave you with one more anecdote before we go. So I was in meditation a while back, and I was really curious about something I had never seen before. And of course, in meditation, I'm trying to relieve myself from attachment, right? Trying not to think about things that I want to know or I want to understand, right? I kind of let go of them, and if I'm meant to know about those things at the time, they'll usually come to me, either outside meditation or in meditation sometimes, but I'm trying to clear my head in meditation. So in meditation, as I was trying to reach tranquility and calm myself down, I was thinking about, kind of creatively, about things I had never seen before. And there's no way to know if this stuff is true or not. Sometimes I think, because of the way it happened, maybe it's just my imagination. But I was thinking about it, and then I went to sleep that night, and then I dreamt about, in real vivid clarity, what I had been asking about in meditation. It came to me in a dream, and when I was dreaming, I saw it was like a rift. It was like this bubble-shaped opening that I was standing in front of, and it opened up in front of me, and on the other side I could see the images of what I had been curious about, and the detail and the clarity on it answered all the questions that I had had about it previously, and it answered them in a way that I had never understood before or never contemplated, and it was something I could only experience like in a dream or in a meditation. I'm sure I could in reality too, but it gave it this kind of life that I wasn't expecting. It was really, really cool. And if I hadn't been thinking about that thing in meditation, right, not sure if I could have kind of visited it in a dreamscape. Just something interesting when we start exploring things that we don't understand, like really cool stuff can happen. I kind of want to leave you with that anecdote based on that. Like there's a lot going on out there that we don't understand, but we can experience. We're so trapped in the day-to-day, and as we get older, I think we have these firmer ideas about the reality around us, and we know, like, this color's that color, this texture feels like this wall is this sturdy, my car drives like this, my relationships are like this, right? And when we think with that rigidity, it really locks everything into our expectation, and we stop experiencing anything outside of that expectation. And the one really cool thing about meditation, on top of a bunch of others, is that it starts to break that expectation, and that's a part of changing the fabric of your reality, is that once you get past that expectation, you start seeing things that you didn't know were there. It's some things you see you didn't know they even existed. In that way, it's like being a small child, and look at the way children experience reality. Everything is a question to them. Everything they're experiencing is new. They don't have any expectation of anything. And when I see kids, and I look at kids, and I listen to kids, like, it changes my perception, because I wonder, like, what the heck happened to me? Like, when did I get so sure of everything around me? When did I think that I know everything? I wish that I could undo that. I wish I could unlearn that. And we can. It's just a process. And it takes a lot of effort. And unfortunately, we have a lot of other stuff going on that takes a lot of effort as well. But if we look at it as a positive challenge and an exciting future that we have, everything can start to change and shift around us. And meditation is a tool or something that you can use to help kind of manifest that for yourself. So again, it's a big topic. That is my experience, and something I wanted to share with a lot of people that I know, and just with anybody that's looking at meditation. I've read some books on it. I've heard some things from other people, and they're all illuminating. They're all interesting. But with meditation, I feel like you really have to kick the door in, and just trying to peek through the crack really isn't the answer. Like, meditation is far more radical and powerful than people realize, or I shouldn't say realize. It's more powerful and radical than people are told. And we're always given these objective scientific opinions and things about physiological change in the body and stuff, and that's all great, but that's not the story of meditation. That's not what it's for. This is something our ancestors developed and mastered, in my opinion, as a way to change their reality and to advance to something much further. And I'm willing to guess that in the annals of history, those people that ascended to something much greater through meditation were the ones that were quietly murdered and never transcribed a memoir, or never had something to pass down to us except for through our genetics and through our DNA, which is tragic. But psychiatry is also tragic. A lot of the things we're experiencing now are also tragic. And so we're a part of the same world that the people came before us are a part of. And so we're meant to experience kind of the same things and try to figure out some of the same things. We're not spared from it, unfortunately. So I hope everyone out there is hanging in there. I'm hanging in there. And I'm really grateful for all the people that I've met on this journey and have gotten to know. It's far, far more cool and far more gratifying and far more positive than I ever could have hoped for. And that's the direction I want to continue to go, and that's the direction I want everybody else to go and to feel as well. We deal with a lot of hardship, but hardship isn't a bad thing. Hardship helps increase our ability to endure, as long as we look at it that way. I think we should look back regularly on all the things that we've gotten through and really be thankful and proud of ourselves for what we've done. And that's the light that we should look forward in. The light of our own resilience and incredible nature. I have a hard time doing it all the time, but that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm working towards. And the more I work on it every day, the easier it gets. So those are my last words. Take care, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.